Welcome. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating period of ancient history. It's a story all about immense power, but a power that was built on a dangerously flawed foundation. We're going to explore the story of a king, a kingdom, and a paradox that, honestly, still echoes today. So let's just start with this big question. What if a nation's greatest strength was also its greatest weakness? I mean, think about that. This is the central puzzle we're going to unpack as we dig into the long and very complicated reign of King Jeroboam II.
Okay, let's get right into it. To really get why one king rises to power, we first have to understand why another one is fading away. The whole political scene is shifting, and the balance of power between the two kingdoms, Judah and Israel, is about to change in a huge way.
Now, this verse from our source text in 2 Kings, it might look kind of straightforward, but it is packed with meaning. It's telling us that King Amaziah of Judah actually outlived his rival up north. But, this wasn't some kind of victory lap for him, not at all. He survived in total humiliation after a crushing military defeat, leaving his own kingdom deeply unstable. And what's so interesting here is the contrast this lays out. Down south, Judah is wounded. Their king is alive, yeah, but he's disgraced, and there's a conspiracy brewing against him. This means the famous Davidic line, that royal lineage going all the way back to King David, it's weak. But up north, Israel is just waiting. There's a power vacuum, and the whole nation is primed for a strong new leader to step in and take charge. You can feel the momentum shifting.
And that is our cue. While Judah is literally struggling to hold itself together, a new king takes the throne in Israel. And this is him, Jeroboam II. And let me tell you, he is about to kick off an absolutely unprecedented era of success. You could almost call it a second golden age.
41. Just let that number sink in for a second. In an era that was defined by assassinations and just constant political chaos, a reign this long wasn't just impressive. It was a sign of almost unimaginable stability. Jeroboam II wasn't just another king. He was an institution. And this timeline just shows you how unique his reign really was. I mean, before him, the throne was like a revolving door of instability. But Jeroboam comes in, takes control, and rules for over 4 decades, bringing Israel to the absolute peak of its power in the region. His success wasn't just political, it was military. This verse tells us he expanded Israel's borders from Hamath way up in the north all the way down to the Dead Sea in the south. This was the biggest Israel had been since the legendary days of King Solomon. By every single external measure, this guy was a phenomenally successful ruler. So, okay, we've got a strong king, a stable government, expanding borders. It looks like a golden age, right? But this is where the paradox really starts to show. What was all this success really built on? And was it as solid as it looked from the outside?
You would think, wouldn't you, that this level of national blessing had to come from a righteous, godly king, that all this incredible success on the outside must mean there's some kind of spiritual health on the inside. Well, the historical record tells a very different story. And here it is, the shocking twist. Despite all his political and military wins, the Bible is crystal clear. Jeroboam II did that which was evil. He kept the state-sponsored idolatry going, that worship of golden calves that had been set up centuries before by the very first king named Jeroboam.
So this is the crucial point, the heart of the paradox. The nation was getting stronger, richer, and bigger on the outside, but it was spiritually rotting from the inside out. There was no repentance, no turning back to God. The national growth was happening completely separate from any kind of national revival.
Okay, so this raises a huge question. If the king was evil and the nation was corrupt, why on earth was God blessing them with so much success? The answer to this actually reveals something pretty profound about how and why divine mercy operates.
The text gives us the reason right here. God's motive wasn't to give Jeroboam a stamp of approval. It was compassion. He saw that the people of Israel were suffering and suffering deeply, that their affliction was very bitter. This prosperity was a response to the people's pain, not a reward for the king's piety.
And this idea is so key to understanding the whole story. This wasn't a reward for good behavior. It was more like a rescue operation, one driven purely by mercy. God was just giving the nation a break, a little room to breathe, simply because they were suffering.
And here's a really cool connection. The text tells us that this period of mercy was actually prophesied by Jonah. Yes, that Jonah, the one with the big fish. This just reinforces the idea that Jeroboam's success wasn't just his own military genius, it was a specific divine act of compassion. But this verse reveals the fine print. This was a temporary reprieve. It was not a permanent pardon. God hadn't canceled the judgment that was coming for their idolatry. He had simply put it on pause. The clock was still ticking. So this brings us to the end of the story and the inevitable question, right? What happens when you build a powerful empire, but on a morally corrupt foundation? What happens when that strong man at the center is finally gone? For Jeroboam himself, this story actually ends pretty well. After 41 years on the throne, he dies peacefully, and he passes the kingdom on to his son. From all appearances, it looks like he's built something that's gonna last. And this chart, wow. It tells you everything you need to know. This is the final devastating lesson of the whole story. You see Jeroboam's reign, 41 years of stability. And then his son, Zechariah, he lasts just 6 months. 6! The moment that powerful leader was gone, the entire system he built, a system based on power without any moral foundation, it crumbled. It basically turned to dust overnight. So, what do we take away from all this? Well, first, that a glittering success on the outside can be hiding a deep rot on the inside. Second, that mercy can be a temporary delay of consequences, not a total cancellation of them. And probably most important, power without a moral center is brittle. It just can't last. A true legacy isn't what you build, but what's left standing after you're gone. And that leaves us with one final thought. Looking at our own world, our nations, our companies, even just our own lives, what are the things that look so strong and successful on the surface, but might just be built on a foundation that's quietly crumbling from within? It's a timeless question from a very old story. Thanks for joining this explainer.